How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with Alex and Ryan. Today we're going to discuss another infielder, and I know it's been quiet the last couple of weeks. Obviously, the Yankees missing on Hiroki Sasaki sucks, and it is what it is. We kind of had a 10% chance on him anyway. We pretty much knew this was going to be the reality, but we held out hope just because it was unknown. Kind of felt like it was all a sham in the end. He was going to go to the West Coast. But we want to talk about an infield solution for the Yankees via trade. Now, Jack Curry on the S Network last night said that both Pete Alonso and Alex Bregman are considering shorter-term deals with higher salaries on a yearly basis. Now, the Chicago Cubs are one of the teams that are interested in Alex Bregman. If that were to happen, could the Yankees be interested in trying to make a move for one of their infielders? In this instance, Nico Hoerner. Now, we know the Yankees had interest in Hoerner a couple months ago, and we know that there is interest from the Cubs with starting pitcher Will Warren. So, what kind of deal could be made there? How could the Yankees go about getting Hoerner, and what would he solve for us in 2025 and 2026? I believe he has 2 more years left of control. He's a free agent in 2027. So 27 years old. He did have surgery on his right flexor tendon on October 11th. He's expected to be ready to go for 2025, so it's not overly concerning. And his financial compensation is about $11.6 million for the upcoming season. So, there's a lot of things to like about Hoerner, but Ryan, we're going to do a deep dive into why he would be a good fit for the Yankees. Would you be willing to send a player like Will Warren? Would it take him and then some to get a guy like Hoerner? Maybe, but definitely curious to hear your thoughts about that. But before we do, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's another solid day, another cold day. Unfortunately, it is just freezing cold, but don't worry. Every time we record, we get another day closer to the start of spring training and warm weather and baseball and action, and not sitting here and wondering what move is going to happen in the dead of January. But in regards to Nico Hoerner, look, the report that came out yesterday that kind of sparked my interest in talking about Nico Hoerner was the one from Bruce Levin of The Score, where he put out a report that the Cubs and Alex Bregman have continued to have conversations. They have had continued dialogue. Now, Chicago is not interested in a long-term deal with Bregman, but there may be an avenue for a short-term deal akin to the one we saw with Blake Snell and akin to the one we saw with Matt Chapman last year. Now, Bregman obviously is someone who could intrigue the Yankees on a short-term deal perhaps, but I'm not particularly sure the Yankees love the fit for the ballpark, nor am I sure that they want to pay what would probably be $30 million for Bregman with a bunch of opt-outs. Now, would I do it? Yeah, I would. I like Bregman. I think he's a good player, but I could see why the Yankees wouldn't, and I could also see where other teams may still be willing to give him that 5 or 6 year offer that he's looking for. Now, Nico Hoerner would be able to shake free in this scenario where the Cubs sign Bregman because they would be able to move Matt Shaw to second base. They would likely import a bunch of salary with Bregman on the roster, and they may want to shed a little bit of payroll. We know how the Cubs have operated this winter. They've kind of been, on one hand, aggressive. They got Kyle Tucker. On the other hand, they've been, trying to cut costs where they can. They still have some needs in the bullpen. They may want to add another starting pitcher, and I think the Yankees have players who the Cubs would like. Now, they had interest in Will Warren when they were discussing a Cody Bellinger trade. That was reported by Pat Ragazzo of Sports Illustrated. The Yankees did have interest in infielder Nico Hoerner before that Kyle Tucker trade. That was reported by Jacob Zanola of Cubs Insider. So there is interest in Hoerner. There was interest in Hoerner, excuse me. There was an interest in bringing him onto the roster. The Cubs have an interest in a player who could help them given some of their pitching needs. They have the 5th worst projected bullpen ERA for any team according to Fangraphs, and the Yankees may have a surplus of relievers to deal out of as well. I think the Yankees could offer a package that kind of is headlined by Will Warren and someone like Ian Hamilton, and bring in someone like Nico Hoerner, who would be an immediate, massive improvement over what the Yankees have in the infield. I know we're going to get comments saying, bottom of the barrel, not good enough, the Yankees shopping for a mediocre player, this, and that, but over the last 3 years, he has a 12.8 F-WAR that is top 5 among second basemen. He has a 337 OBP, a 105 WRC+. He has 3 straight years of stealing at least 20 bases. Even the last 2 years, he's stolen 31 and 43 bases. He is one of the best base runners in baseball. He's one of the best defensive players in baseball, and he averages about 4 to 4.5 WAR a season. We talked about, making meaningful upgrades and making yourself meaningfully better than the rest of the American League. Nico Hoerner adds about 3 WAR to your roster because you also have to factor in playing time that Cabrera wouldn't get or that other guys on the roster wouldn't get and subtract it from the total. We're talking about a 3 WAR improvement for the Yankees here. If the Yankees improved by 3 wins above replacement, according to projections, they would have they would have 0.1 more projected WAR than the Dodgers. Do I think Nico Hoerner makes them better than the Dodgers? No. But Alex, in an offseason where Brian Cashman and the front office has talked about infield defense, second base defense, being better on the bases, all that stuff, would adding a guy who could steal 30 plus base for you and put up Gold Glove defense at second base and have a pretty solid OBP, is that not exactly what the Yankees should be looking for? I think Nico Hoerner is perfect for the Yankees. He's owed about $11 million this year and next year. 2 years of control, 27 years old, excellent athlete, good enough bat. To me, he's kind of like Ha-Seong Kim if we didn't have to worry about a shoulder surgery, right? I know elbow surgery is concerning, but shoulder's going to knock out Kim for like a couple weeks early in the year too.
Absolutely. And, Hoerner, like you mentioned, his stuff is pretty good. Like, you could lead him off if you wanted to. 99th percentile whiff rate, 99th percentile strikeout rate, 91st percentile expected batting average. I know last year he came in at 273. His expected batting average is 280. So, this is a guy, at the same time, you're not getting any power. Like, you're not going out and getting Nico Hoerner for his power. He did hit 7 homers last year, which is obviously not a large amount. In Yankee Stadium, may even be less than that. But you want him for his batting average, right? You want him to get on base. He had a 33.5% on base percentage this past season. He's a slightly above average. Like you said, he's like Ha-Seong Kim, but healthy for the most part. A 3.9 WAR player this past season. And the thing about Kim is that he's only had that one 4 WAR season. Nico Hoerner kind of does this every year. He had 4.3 WAR in 22, 4.6 in 23, 3.9 this past year. He's played 150 games minimum in his last 2 seasons. Obviously, his strikeout rate over those 2 seasons is about 11%. This is a guy that's going to bring a really valuable skill to the equation. He's basically like Gleyber Torres if he was just a high batting average hitter. Like second half Gleyber Torres, that's kind of what Nico Hoerner is, maybe with a little bit less power. He's going to punch the ball into the outfield. He's going to do all those good things, but the 31 stolen bases, Gleyber Torres can't even sniff those numbers, man. Like, Nico Hoerner is an elite base runner, and we saw the impact of great base running with Jazz Chisholm. Like, he can turn a single and suddenly he's on third base, and then suddenly he's scoring with 1 out, and you're like, okay, well, if that was Giancarlo Stanton on base, he's not even getting to third, he's not even to second, man. He's not stealing any bags. You're probably walking away from that inning without a run. And when it comes down to the playoffs, those details, those fine details matter substantially. There's a lot of 3-1 games, 2-1 games, 5-4 games, like 1-run margin games, and Nico Hoerner is a guy that can punch those runs in, and I think that's very, very impactful. Now, this is a really interesting player that I do think definitely fits the bill for the Yankees. Last year, he spent 273 at-bats leading off, hit 267 with a 322 OBP. You want him hitting in front of your best hitter, and Aaron Judge, he's going to have a 267 average. That's pretty solid. I'm definitely excited about that aspect as well. And you mentioned the defense. I mean, this is a tremendous defensive player at second base. Played 1,234 innings last year, had 8 errors, a 9.86 fielding percentage, 4 defensive runs saved, and 10 outs above average. This is one of the best second basemen in the sport. So, he kills 2 birds with 1 stone in terms of the base running and in terms of the fielding. And if you want to add a third bird into it, he also has an elite batting average, and he's one of the best swing decision guys at the position in the league. So, he's kind of the anti-Gleyber Torres in a lot of ways. He's the exact opposite of Gleyber Torres. But now, Ryan, you have one of the best infield defenses in the sport. So, talk to me about that. The importance of having a Garrett Cole and a Max Fried and, 2 of the best run prevention arms in baseball. How critical is it that you have a great defense behind them? How many times have we seen Marcus Stroman have issues, because the Yankees couldn't score runs, but the infield defense let them down. How important is it having a defense? What does Hoerner do for that equation and upgrading that unit entirely? And I think it really is an underrated factor in this discussion.
I think you make an excellent point in regards to how impactful defense is. Nico Hoerner has been so valuable because of his glove that we're talking about a guy who's been, again, a top 5 player at the position over the last 3 years, according to wins above replacement. Zips projection to put up a 4.5 WAR. Alex, if you get a 4.5 WAR out of Nico Hoerner, holy hell, are you a lot better at second base. I know that people, Steamer has him a little more conservative, 3.3. Oopsie, I know that doesn't even sound like a projection system, but trust me, it is. It's one that recently released. It has more bat speed and kind of barrel-related data. It has him being about a 98 WRC plus hitter with a 2.2 WAR. What I would what I would mention in regard to those two projection systems is that the WAR is so low, or excuse me, it's a 2.7, not a 2.2, but the WAR projection is so low because they project him not only to, in the case of, I can't even, I feel like saying oopsie sounds weird as a project. Doesn't it sound like a weird name for a projection system? I actually spoke to Jordan Rosenblum, who developed it. Very smart guy, but the name is funny. He mentioned that the name is like kind of derived from the fact that projections can have errors and, the common like oopsie, he made a mistake, trying to it's an interesting concept for a name, but point is, these projections have him being way worse on the bases and way worse defensively than he's been throughout his entire career, because defensive projections are hard to do, man, and so are base running projections. So what I would say is I would take a little bit more of what Zips has to say about his defensive base running, which is premium defender, premium base runner, but I do agree with Zips in the sense that they have him as like a 101 WRC plus hitter. That's probably where I'd project him as well. Coming off elbow surgery, I do expect him to not have a career year or anything like that to play. But one piece of data I found interesting while doing my mock trade article, and if you guys want to check it out, it's on empiresportsmedia.com. Links for everything are in the description. I looked at this graphic developed by Jacob E_STL on Twitter. He's a great follow. He's a Cardinals fan, but he's got a tons of great general MLB content. And if you look at how his bat plays at Chicago versus how it would play in Yankee Stadium over the last 3 years, he would see a pretty, not a massive improvement offensively, but a notable one. Chicago actually doesn't really play well to his strengths. I'm not saying Yankee Stadium is perfect for his strengths, but it's less of a harsh hitting condition. I also looked at the data last year. Nico Hoerner had an 87 WRC plus at home, and a huge reason for that was because the win in Chicago absolutely killed fly balls. Fly balls traveled way less in Chicago compared to anywhere else this past year. It was an extreme run environment in a negative way, similar way as we talked to about Jorge Polanco. The run environment in Coors Field is about 10%. It's 10. We observe 10% more runs scored in Coors Field than the average ballpark. And Coors Field has always been considered the most extreme ballpark in baseball. Well, Chicago this past year, Wrigley Field specifically, had observed 9% fewer runs. So it was almost as extreme of a ballpark in terms of run environment as Coors Field. The layman's terms way to say this is that Chicago was really, really bad for hitters, and hitting there was a nightmare. And bringing in Cody Bellinger, we talked about that with Bellinger, but it's true for Hoerner as well, who really did struggle because, again, that ballpark was awful to hit at. Doubles turn into flyouts. Home runs turn into flyouts. Singles turn into balls that hang in the air a little too long. It was a nightmare to hit in. So, I imagine moving away from that extreme ballpark and going to Yankee Stadium, it'll just allow his numbers to be closer to his, normal 105-ish WRC plus, 335 to 340 OBP. And Alex, I would take a 335 or 340 OBP at the top of my lineup any day of the week. You mentioned Gleyber Torres, that style of offense, it was totally fine in front of Aaron Judge. It was perfectly fine. It'll work. And Hoerner's going to create chaos on the bases. And that's another big thing here too, Alex. We talk about this with defense, but with base running, it's more true. The Yankees were a historically bad base running team last year. They cannot be historically bad at base running. I even argue they cannot be a bottom 10 base running team and try to win games without Juan Soto. It's not going to happen. They'll win 82, 83 games doing that. They need to be a good base running team if they want to win the World Series. And I think Hoerner is a nice step in the right direction there. Alex, when you think about dynamic base running and a guy who stole 94 bases in the last 3 years, so averaging about 31 steals a year, why do you think that'd be so impactful? And how do you think that would affect this team's ability to score runs if they were a little more agile on the bases?
It's apparent. It's obvious. You watched our base running last year. It looked like people with blindfolds on. Gleyber Torres was completely lost. How many times do we see him not even tag up and just get thrown out at second base? Like, I saw maybe at first base multiple times. He just didn't tag up. Like, he just didn't even realize how far off the bag he was. So, we're talking about just the mental competence on the bases that will be a massive difference. And, having a guy like Nico Hoerner lead off, let's say he punches a single into the outfield, right? In a game situation, he's on base on first base. You got Aaron Judge, and you got to pitch to Aaron Judge now with the guy on first. So, you're really in a dangerous spot. Nico Hoerner steals second base. Right now, you have a guy on second base, stole a bag. Aaron Judge is still up to bat. You either going to walk him and put him on base, or you're going to have to pitch to him. A single, Nico Hoerner scoring from second base, right? I think that the efficiency of his abilities on the base paths is an element the Yankees have not had at leadoff in quite some time. If you get Nico Hoerner, let's just talk about it generally in terms of this entire lineup. Nico Hoerner is an elite base runner. You have Jason Dominguez, who's now in the equation here, and he is head and shoulders better base runner than Alex Verdugo. You have a full season of Jazz Chisholm. You have Anthony Volpe, and think about, like, Anthony Volpe at times was a little conservative on the bases because they just didn't have that many players to really kind of back it up. But you watch teams like the Cleveland Guardians and how great of base running teams they are. Like, you just see other clubs and they manufacture runs. Having and not to say the Yankees could have won the World Series last year. They could have won a championship, but obviously the cards didn't fall their way. But having that extra element where now you're the Dodgers, let's say again, and you're meeting the Yankees in the World Series, and you're like, this is not the same Yankee team that we saw last year. Yeah, they don't have Juan Soto, but they're a tremendously better base running team. Like, we were one of the worst base running teams in the league in history last season. Now you have one of the best overnight. So that's a whole nother element you have to figure out. And you have one of the best defensive infields is a whole nother element you have to figure out. So, and Cody Bellinger is head and shoulders better than Aaron Judge in center field specifically. Now he's also probably equal to Verdugo in left field if that's where they're going to have him, if you put Jason in center. So, this is a situation. I think Jason in center is probably about equivalent to Aaron Judge last year in center in terms of just, defensive runs saved and outs above average. If you're just a fielding percentage guy, maybe Judge is a bit better. But, I think that the Yankees outfield should be better defensively on paper, and the base running should be better defensively better on paper, not defensively, but the base running is better, and defensively on the infield, you're better on paper. So, all these things should contribute to a much more balanced and efficient equation for the Yankees. And you're losing the power from Soto, obviously, but Hoerner adds a different kind of element to this equation. So, I'll ask you this in terms of trade haul. Do you think a 1-for-1 swap would be able to get it done for Hoerner and Will Warren, or do you think the Yankees got to kick in a little bit more?
I would think the Yankees have to kick in more because, this is kind of something I remain consistent about. I try to remain consistent about. I think Nico Hoerner is a good player. So, why would I offer just like one player or one prospect who hasn't proven himself at the major league level yet for that player? I do think that the Yankees have what the Cubs would be looking for. One area where I think the Cubs could really benefit from trading from the Yankees is the bullpen. And Ian Hamilton stands out to me as something that, to say the very least, like, Ian Hamilton is a pitcher who is confusing because, he spent most of his career not really being a productive big leaguer, but I think the progress he's made with the Yankees is huge. I think he really has become a strong major league reliever, and with 4 years of control, one of those being pre-arbitration, he could be a really valuable piece to a Cubs team that needs a lot of bullpen help. They need to consistently and continually add to the bullpen. Warren could be part of that bullpen solution for them as well. He could kind of like come up as a reliever at first and then kind of develop into a starting role. They've done that with other pitchers on their team. So that's two guys who can slide into their bullpen. And I threw in a third prospect in my mock trade, Cam Schlittler, because he's an interesting player. Baseball America named him as one of the three guys in the Yankee system that they project to have a breakout season. Hit a 3.36 ERA. Solid fastball, really good sweeping slider. Developed more of a sharper, tighter slider to pair with his sweeper. So he's got, three pitches that I think are really solid. Velo gains are massive. He hit 97 on the radar gun this year, sat at 94 miles per hour. It's a huge step up from what he's been at before in college. And he's a big guy. He's like 6'6", 6'7". So, he's got some funky release points. I view Schlittler as a pretty solid pitching prospect, someone who could be kind of in that top 15 to 20 range in the Yankee organization and, probably close to that 20 to 25 range in the Cubs organization since they have better prospects. But again, you add, let's say, a top 30 prospect, Warren, who will also be in the top 30 for the Cubs and probably be in that 10 to 15 range or that 5 to 10 range, and then add an MLB reliever in Ian Hamilton, and I think that is a deal that would get the Cubs kind of not even just talking. I think that could get a deal done. I think that the headliner obviously here is Hamilton and Warren. Warren's a young controllable pitcher. Hamilton is a young controllable reliever. But I think that the baseline for what the Yankees can offer is good. And then for the Yankees, you replace Hamilton by signing a left-handed reliever. I know Ian Hamilton rocks, and I know that, you can never have too much pitching, but if you import, you have JT Brubaker, who's on the roster and guaranteed a spot on the 40-man because he was given an MLB guaranteed deal through arbitration. Efros was maintained through arbitration. Maybe he gets a shot. Clayton Beater is someone that Matt Blake has talked up. You could sign Tim Hill. Suddenly your bullpen depth, you can kind of live with it. You know what I mean? You've imported Fernando Cruz. You've imported Devin Williams. I think the Yankees could afford to, trade a reliever to get a bat back. And I think the reliever market's a lot more generous than the hitting market right now. I mean, the Yankees could sign a guy for $3 million that you and I have never heard of. And I promise you and I will find some information that would indicate, oh, the Yankees have a reason for signing this guy. They do a great job with non-roster invites. I just personally think the Yankees should be looking at their bullpen, looking at bullpen needy teams, and trying to find ways to make deals line up. Because again, Nico Hoerner, man, he is a game changer. This is a 4-WAR player. 4-WAR players do not exist on this market. They do not exist. Alex Bregman's one of the few guys I can think of in the infield market who can, have that, like, I'm a 4 to 5-WAR player argument. And to compare him to Alex Bregman, and I know that this is going to sound disrespectful to some fans, but just stick with me through this comparison. Nico Hoerner has a 12.8 WAR over the last 3 years. Alex Bregman has 14 WAR over the last 3 years. Bregman has played in about 25 more games. So, roughly they're about a 1-win difference apart in 3 years. That's within the margin of error. So if you think Alex Bregman would be a high impact player, I would argue Nico Hoerner's an high impact player. He doesn't have the same bat, but he has great base running, and he has a similar OBP. It's 337 to 349, and Bregman plays in a more run-heavy run environment, and obviously the better base runner is Hoerner, and obviously the better defender is Hoerner. I mean, Hoerner is one of the best defensive players in the sport. He is 11th in defensive value over the last 3 seasons, and he is 6th in base running value over the last 3 seasons. That's the kind of player you're bringing in. And of course, as I mentioned, 105 WRC plus, 337 OBP. The Yankees want to make this about defensive base running and being better fundamentally. Cool. Go get one of the best fundamentally sound players in the league. I'm going to liken him to an OG Anunoby, liken him to, that guy who gels in your lineup, who just fits everything you need, who makes your team better. I can't really think of a football comparison off the top of my head, but, it's that kind of just like he makes your lineup gel. You just get a bunch of value there, and that Volpe Hoerner up the middle defensively. What the hell, Fried? Dude, you don't even have to miss a single bat. Just go spam the sinker. Go get a bunch of ground balls. When Loizaga comes back, dude, Loizaga's never going to give up a hit. He'll never give up a hit with that infield defense. Goldschmidt, the veteran at first, receive scoops. Jazz has a rocket arm at third. Hoerner can play short if something happens to Volpe, and he's an elite defensive shortstop. I mean, the upside is limitless with this addition. Your defense is elite, your base running is elite, and your offense, you need OBP, you don't necessarily need power, you get considerably better as well there, so yeah, I'm super in on this, man.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see if anything materializes and keep you guys updated. We'll see what happens with Bregman. He's obviously the piece that needs to fall before anything would materialize in this kind of realm. But we like Nico Hoerner. The analysis, I mean, all the metrics and numbers suggest that he's a really good fit for the Yankees. He hits a lot of the points. He checks a lot of the boxes that we need. Great defense, great base running, great batting average. Yeah, he's not going to offer a ton of power, but we don't need that much power. We're just looking for a guy that's going to get on base and hit for a high batting average and do the things that we need him to do, the anti-Gleyber Torres, basically. So I'm really excited to see kind of how the next couple weeks unfold. If the Yankees do have the intention of adding another infield bat, I think they do. It's just a matter of being patient, waiting for the right opportunity to present itself. But guys, always happy to hear your thoughts down below in the YouTube comment section. Make sure to like, subscribe as always, leave a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.
Perfect.